All right. Welcome, everyone, to another session of Innovators Live. Super excited to doing this today. Give us a couple of seconds and we'll start. Blake, happy Friday.
Thanks, you too. Hope everybody has got some good weekend plans, and I haven't looked at the weather yet, but hopefully it'll allow us to finally get outside a little bit. I'm in Minnesota, so we had 87 degrees, and 3 days later we had 2 inches of snow. 3 days later it was 50 degrees, and this morning it was sleeting out. So you
Wow.
never know what you're gonna get. But
I mean, I'm not complaining. It's sunny today, and I'll take all the sun.
yeah.
I'll take all the sun. We need more sun. Perfect. I think I can start. Again, welcome everyone to another session of Innovators Live. My name is Asad. I'm a product marketing manager at Boast, and I'll be your host for today. And today we have Blake Nelson joining us, who is a principal product manager. Blake, would you love to tell the audience about your role and what you do?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thanks, Asad. So, as Asad said, I'm a product manager at Boast AI, and what we're essentially tasked with doing as product management is taking our software and making sure that we produce the best software that's going to produce the best result for our customers. So, I'm in charge of developing the roadmap, figuring out what's next, and thinking about things like AI and how do we utilize it to leverage what we already do in Boast, which if you're not as familiar with Boast, we help out with preparing tax claims for R&D companies so that they can get some of that money back and reinvest in the R&D space.
Fantastic. And with that, I mean, let's jump into the topic. So AI and machine learning has been such a big theme, and we've realized as we jump deeper and deeper into it, we see there are a lot of concerns that have been raised among creatives, politicians, business leaders. And with that, we're trying to see, with the growing practical uses of AI and the implications it might have. Really, this session will be focusing on the regulations that are coming up and really trying to understand what will happen and what to expect next. Blake, so from here, my first question is really, what do you think are the primary concerns surrounding the adoption of AI, and how could you relate this to, let's say, data privacy and security?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a really important question, and I'm sure many of the people that are listening, if you've said the words AI, you've started to see Google feed or Facebook feeds coming up showing you different advancements in AI lately. And with that comes the concerns about how is it being used, and is my data secure, and if I'm using, is the information that I'm providing it secure or being used in different ways. And so I think when you talk about the primary concerns, you've got the big concerns like when are the robots taking over the world? But really, we're bringing it back a little bit to the day to day, and you're thinking about how much data is going in here, how much relevant data is going in here, and where's the data coming from? Is it a trustworthy source of the data? And then what's being done with that data? Is it being used to inform the AI and teach it more and help it to learn? Is it producing content that we can trust and that we can make sure that, if we see something, how do we understand, was this human produced? Was this AI produced? And how viable is it as well? As technology advances, we need to keep an eye on those things. And what I want to say related to security and concerns is, while AI is nothing new, it's been around for a long time. The application of AI is really starting to take off in real world applications. And legislation typically takes a little while to catch up with technology and innovation, right? So we're early on in that legislative kind of component. So it's important that we talk about things as businesses and as individuals in the private and public sectors to surface our thoughts, our concerns to legislation to make sure that they understand, hey, here's how we'd like this to be leveraged in our day-to-day lives as these companies start to experiment with it and play with it a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I think that's very important to understand. And I like when you mentioned, proper use permissions that you need when it comes to AI itself. Moving ahead with that a bit is also trying to understand, could you give us a quick overview of the current regulations that have been introduced or being proposed regarding AI?
Sure. Yeah. I'm by no means the universal expert in this, but I'll give just kind of a high level on the history of the regulations. So AI, as I said, has been used and experimented with for a long time, but really the first group and country to say, "Hey, we need to look at this and put some curbs and boundaries around it," was the EU. So they produced the AIA, the Artificial Intelligence Act, in 2021. And that's really kind of bumped other countries to say, okay, we need to now start looking at this and really take a serious, closer look at it. So really, it looks like it's on par with a lot of the other regulations that we see from CAN spam and Customer and Consumer Privacy Act. Those are the type of things that they're talking about in these regulations is, how is my data being used? Do I have the ability to say, don't use this data? Or I want to tell you how to use this data. And uh, even more than on the personal level of the logins and the things that you're providing it, the content that you're asking it to generate then as well, being able to say, I want control, I want more control over that. And I want to understand how you're using it first and foremost, so that I can inform my own usage of the tool. So European Union kind of started the trend of, let's put some legislation around it, right? The U.S. government picked up on that, and shortly after, about 6 months after, in October 2021, they pitched the Blueprint for AI Bill of Rights. So this is something that's been proposed, and really they're trying to, again, determine how we look at the data, can have control over your own data and how it's used. The Canadian government last year also has released a bill, the Artificial Intelligence and Data Act, and that is, again, along the same lines, trying to make sure that protect privacy, people understand what's available and how these companies are using their own data and the data they provide to inform their own algorithms, their own AI, and their own machine learning. So those are the three big ones that are kind of out in the world right now. European Union has one. The U.S. government has pitched and is talking a lot about those, and kind of in that process. And then Canadian government has got some regulation around it as well.
It's always interesting how the EU sets the precedent and then other countries begin to follow. You think about GDPR, you have CCPA, you have GAPSPAN. It always starts with the European Union pushing, and it's always good. It's these regulations are needed, and it's a better understanding of how we protect data itself.
Yeah, I think.
Uh,
Yeah, I just want to take a second and say that it's really important to understand that when we're talking about regulation, there's going to be a whole lot of different opinions on how regulated and how not regulated, but we all want the same goal of understand and help make some decisions about what's going on. So yeah, EU tends to lead the way in those type of take the leap, and others tag on. But yeah.
Yeah, that's so important. Really, let's try to understand a bit more about the regulations that have been proposed in North America. Let's take Canada, for example, with the Artificial Intelligence Data Act. Any key points you want to highlight?
Yeah, there's a few. Really, it's they're talking about how to govern and regulate and normalize and standardize the rules for the design, the development, and the application of those AI systems. So when I talk about the regulation and the usage, they're trying to protect against those tools uh, causing harm to individuals on a few different levels. Talking about causing harm on an actual physical or psychological harm component, damage to property or intellectual property, and then protecting against any potential economic loss that individuals might see if they use AI, and then that they want to make sure that the AI isn't used to, override any type of components that are already in place, like if you have trademarking or those type of things. So that's what they're trying to do. And really, what the ADA is going to be doing on a practical sense is they're going to have a minister and a committee that's going to produce records, complete an audit of current usage, and make some of that public so that people can understand, hey, what's currently out there? How is it currently being used? And then it's going to provide recommendations for those rules and regulations on how we can kind of standardize, here's the type of information you need to give to your consumers to let them know what's going on. And then they would also make sure that if any do kind of cross the boundary of those, that they flag them and that they make known that, hey, this company has maybe overstepped or is doing these things, and surface that information. Really trying to, it's all about information providing, which is kind of funny because AI is all about information gathering and using that. And that's what they want to do, is make sure that they understand and regulate the information to the public and businesses that want to use these type of tools. It's really important to understand the privacy policies and compliance components that the companies that build the AI tools have in place, and help people understand, past the legalese that's often in place. What is the real practical actions that I can take to make sure that my information is secure?
100%. And I like how you mentioned it's all an information game. At the end of the day, it's just coming down to your data and the information that's coming through. Really, I'd like to learn from jumping from the Canadian side. Let's jump into more on the US side and try to understand the blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights.
Yeah. So they're a little more prescriptive, a little more specific in how they call out these. The Canadian component, they're on the researching and investigating and auditing side. The Bill of Rights that the U.S. has proposed has got some guidelines already laid out that we can look at. So number one is the safe and effective use of these systems. So that's saying that really citizens shouldn't be exposed to poorly qualified and designed systems that have unsafe outcomes. So it's trying to regulate and make sure that somebody can't just produce an AI and then put it out in the public and without a whole lot of knowledge behind it, right? It has to be some proven results behind that. Second is protect against any type of discrimination protection. So AI can't be designed with a bias in mind. This is going to be a tricky one for them to look at, right? But the essence of it is that as the AI is designed, it's used to generate output. That output should not be designed with a preconceived bias in mind. Again, going to be a tricky one to see how they actually look at the implications and the practical application of making sure this is true. Then they have the data privacy component to it, making sure that the organizers and the users of the data are using it properly. There's a whole lot of regulations around data privacy, so I'm sure this will just dovetail into those type of languages and practices. On top of that is the notice and explanation of the usage. So any tool that's produced and put out in the public needs to have clearly outlined how it's being used, how your data is being used, how you can change and control how your data is being used, if it's being used to train the algorithms and the AI to learn more, or if it's not being used that way. And then they have another component called human alternatives, consideration, and fallback. So this means that you have the right to opt out, but also that there is a human component behind that you can reach out to and engage with. So a company can't just say, oh, you opted out? Yeah, our AI takes care of opting you out of everything, right? There's got to be a human level that you can reach to say, I want to make a phone call to this individual and actually talk to a person that's going to help me execute this opt-out kind of compliance.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for sharing so much information. I mean, regulations are complicated. It's a work in progress, and we'll see what happens in the next couple of months or years when it comes to regulations itself. Really, Blake, any final words on your end for AI that our audience should be aware of?
Yeah, I think if you're new to the language of AI and just kind of figuring out what it can do and what it is and how you might be able to use it, the first thing that I can say is um, be cautious, be overly cautious at first until you're familiar with it. If you start using a tool, look at their privacy policies. The privacy policies should be written in a way that it's pretty easy to understand how they are and how they are not using the information. So I think that's really important to, educate yourself a little bit. When you jump in, don't just start slapping all your data in that AI and seeing what happens, right? Think about the use case. Think about, is there potential for misuse here, and understand how that tool is going to do it. Email was a new thing once. Facebook was a new thing once. LinkedIn was a new thing once, right? And so this is not an entirely new concept, right? It's a different use case of technology helping us to do our jobs better, to perform better in our personal lives, and help simplify, right? That's the goal of technology, help simplify what we
Exactly.
do every single day. So it's not new. The same type of precautions that you would take when using other tools. If you're not familiar with it, be more cautious. As you become more educated, you can expand your use cases. And the last point that I want to make that I think is really critical for everyone to understand is there's a big difference between personal use of these tools and a company leveraging one of these AI tools to inform or enhance their product. And there's a whole different set of rules and regulations that go on there. So if you are an individual using one of these tools, make sure you know on an individual basis what they can and cannot do. If you're a company, you have another layer of responsibility to not only protect your own, but also protect your own clients and customers' data when you're using these tools. So, big difference, different use cases, and it's important to understand where you fit into the picture and just educate yourself.
Education is important, 100%. Again, big thank you so much for putting this all together. Uh, Very concise. It's a very massive topic, and you've put it all together in 15 minutes. So kudos to you. Uh, Thank you so much for that. I think we're open for any questions. If not, you can always reach out to us on our LinkedIn. Happy to answer anything you might have. If nothing, then until next time, please join us again next Friday
Thanks so much,
for
Asad.
another
Thanks,
session of, yeah,
everyone.
thank you.